All right. So Nils and I are going to just kind of tag team on this. So I'll get it going. And basically, I kind of wanted to present a kind of big picture and propose a few questions maybe to reflect on. So you're welcome to take notes or add notes in the chat space if something strikes you or you have a question. We'll get back to it or try to address it as it goes. And then we're going to show 3 or 4 examples of some portfolio entries talking about storytelling. How do you tell the story? What does that look like? And then we'll zoom back out to kind of. So I wanted to kind of think about it from a different angles so that we could really promote conversation in different ways. And so, architecture, interior architecture, what is it? What do we mean by, is my slide showing?
Yeah.
I have to admit someone.
Oh, sorry, that's my fault.
Okay, no worries. And I always think it's kind of interesting. Is architecture and interior architecture a calling? Is it a job or a lifestyle for you? Could be all of the above to some degree, but I think it's interesting to think about, how did you get here? And what's kind of driving you? Is it something that you're really impassioned to do, somebody influenced you in your life, or you experienced a building that really got you thinking about, is this a calling? Is this something you just really have to do? A job. We all need jobs to pay for our lives. And so, what does that mean for you? Do you have other interests? And really, architecture is a supportive way of being, and will get you to other places, but it's not really the end of, where you want to be or the kind of focus. Or is it a lifestyle, right? Just the kind of way in which we, I think it's so interesting as an architecture and studying this, you start to kind of incorporate it in your life, right? And so you go out in the world and you're constantly thinking and you're participating, and it starts to influence some of the decisions you make as you kind of make your own apartments, your own lives, and imagine your future. So what kind of type of architect or interior architect do you want to be? Do you have you at this point started to think about or find things that really are meaningful, get you up in the morning and get you excited about pursuing this degree? How do you get the best set of experiences at KU? Do you have a kind of roadmap or a kind of sense of the experiences you're going to need to really feel fulfilled? You to kind of connect and be, I guess, have a meaningful set of experiences. Hopefully it's more than just a degree, right? Like it really adds up. And maybe sometimes for some, it might be taking classes in other fields or study abroad or internships or other ways to understand, where architecture could land for you. How do you get the attention of employers in this competitive field? I mean, that's really, your portfolio is going to help you gain the attention and the kind of support from others. It's going to get you into places. And how do you realize your full potential in the professional world? Are you thinking about that yet? I know when you first start the degree program, you're thinking, well, how do I get through KU? But at this point, you're kind of pivoting into this. What does the professional world look like for you beyond KU? Where do you want to be? Where do you want to live? What kind of projects do you want to do? What will your daily life be? Are you looking at professional firms, websites? Are you meeting people? Are you visiting firms? Are you really getting to kind of understand what your options potentially could be? So, life happens, sometimes accidents and relationships build that are surprising, but there's also ways of being, I think, intentional about what you want and what you want to be. So I always recommend to students to, I hope you're doing this, keeping a journal, reflecting on what projects come your way and experiences that really add up to be something important and meaningful for you. Nils, I'm talking a lot. Do you want to add anything to that?
You're doing a great job. Makes me, all these things I'm thinking about myself.
I know, that's the interesting thing. My life pivoted about 6 years ago when we started Dot Agency, and I have not changed since. So you never know when, you know, things will happen and all of a sudden you're on a new trajectory. So believe me, life happens and it will continually change. All right. So, you know, the portfolio, what you want to be, how you're going to exist in this world is highly personal, and it varies from individual to individual. And so anything that anyone presents to you about a portfolio, about your, you know, your college experience, where you're going as a profession, there's so many different varieties. And that's the thing, is you really want to make it something that works for you if you can.
Well, I will add in there, excuse me, I will add in there that I was here the last time you had one of these, and some of you may have heard me say this, and I truly believe it. I think your portfolio is the single most important thing you'll walk away from your education with. Some people might think it's your degree, but everybody that graduates gets the same degree. It's a technicality at some level, but your portfolio is about you. It's about your values, your skills, your aesthetic preferences, your way of being in the world. And so that's the thing that is going to attract someone's attention. It's not the fact that you got a degree from this school. So
yeah, and I think the portfolio is an interesting process because it changes from semester to semester, and as you grow older and look at it in a retrospective way, you know, you'll see things that trigger memories and ambitions, but you'll also mature and change your perspective of what matters to you. And so it's kind of almost like a journal. Don't make it so pressure and, you know, don't make it a fearful thing, but more of an enjoyable way to kind of play and move things around, change the order of things, add, you know, experiences to it. It's kind of in a way, a kind of self-discovery work of art. And I think if you think about it that way, and you really play with it and invest in it that way, it's going to come off really, you know, sharing who you are and what matters to you. It'll naturally happen. So the more you play with it, just like anything, the more you practice, the more you kind of engage it, the better and stronger it will be. And so, you know, you have to kind of establish this kind of framework. What is it? A folio is a visual narrative. It illustrates your thought processes, and it takes your viewer from conception to construction. So you are communicating through this framework, right? You're telling a story. You're telling a series of stories. The content builds a story. The graphically consistency of the typography and a grid layout, right? Like it has to kind of hold together in a way that makes sense, that's not confusing to your viewer, that tells the story in a kind of sequential and informative way. It has hierarchy and good use of white space, right? It breathes. If it's overwhelming and too much, you've lost your reader, right? So stories have paragraphs, they have punctuation, they have chapters, yet they have a kind of format and a way that they hold together. And, you know, image development with coordinated color strategies are always helpful. And again, you might start with something and then, you know, the next year when you redo it or as you move through it, it might change because you have time to kind of respond to it. So again, see it as a kind of fluid set of possibilities, and not, I guess, get too locked down into, you know, thinking that there's one way to do this, right? It's really kind of playing with it. I always say that projects are like chapters in the folio. And I'm going to take you through a series of 6 images of this portfolio. The first page typically provides the big picture or the context. And so you can really see it's distinctive here, right? It's got a big title, Sustainable Urbanism. Bang, we know what this project's about. You're messaging to your viewer what they're going to see in this. And then you have to deliver it, right? But you're setting a kind of agenda or a focus. And then the subtitle, Mixed Use Urbanist Project in Chongqing, accurately, but you know, we know that it's urban, we know it's mixed use, and we know its location. And so just through the hierarchy of the text, the placement of the text, look at all that white space above. We know this is important and it sets the stage. And then there's a kind of tagline or like the space below the title. Type the studio, when you did it, you know, probably could have the a location it does, maybe the professor that you worked with, these kind of data, square footage, building type, and then the add to that. And, you know, look at it, it's only like, you know, couple paragraphs, not too much, but well crafted, that helps set the tone, sets the kind of direction. What I like about this is it's got this really beautiful big image. We understand what this project is about quickly, and then these little diagrams on the right side, right? So if you took time, you could probably start to kind of deconstruct or imagine what the project is about. Second page, where typically now we're going to go into a little bit more detail, right? Like you're kind of working from big picture or kind of conceptual narrative to a kind of broad macro scale, site context, programming process, right? What I love about this 2-page spread is the subtitles kind of help us understand moving from left to right what we're looking at, site, program. And then I love this image that spans the 2 pages, right? Again, giving us a sense of what this project's about. So we're kind of playing from kind of site drawing and diagrams to kind of big picture. It's complex, right? My eye is going all over, I'm connecting, I'm excited because there's lots of detail, well-crafted, intentional, you know, imaging. Relies on the images, and if I want to slow down, I can look at the text and read it. But at another level, I can pretty quickly understand what the parts are and how the evolution of the project happened. Has something to do with that site section. That's really important, right? We can see that. Then typically when you're telling a story, you want to quickly get into some of those details. The floor plans are really kind of a conceptual drawing that helps you understand programming and the specifics of dimensions and square footages, right? What I like about this spread is, you know, it also gives us a perspectival image, so we can kind of see the plans, they're aligned and well done. And then sections are always really helpful. Orthographic plans and sections. Sometimes I think those are missing sometimes in portfolios. Don't ever do that. This is super important. Your architects, your interior architects, and this kind of dimensional, so we understand the kind of general organization.
I remember reviewing a portfolio one time. I was on a scholarship committee. So these are strong students who were applying for these portfolio or scholarships. And I remember looking at one portfolio and it didn't have a single orthographic drawing in it. It was just like digital renderings. And I thought to myself, that is just crazy, because, you know, these abstract drawings give us understandings of architecture that perspectival images don't. They tell us how a building works, you know, spatially, from a circulation point of view, you know, how they work kind of constructionally and all that sort of stuff. And there's not an employer out there that's not going to expect you to know how to do orthographic drawings. So you better be able to demonstrate that you know how. Like what are the qualities of a good orthographic drawing? Exhibit line hierarchy, you know, the kind of good taste in how the choices you make as you draw these things.
Yeah, and it relays that this is buildable, right? There's a certain kind of dimension of the ground. The site is, again, is so important to the scheme. So they give a lot of depth to that. It's really stable. And then this building negotiates between these two ground planes. And so you can see that a lot of the challenge of this project is really how do we get from people from the lower end to the higher end, and how important that section is. And actually that's where all the spatial interest happens, right? On the left side of this drawing, we're seeing it's almost like a 3-story space. And that's the exciting bit of it. And then it moves into housing and, you know, a roof garden and other places where it connects to the landscape. So the sectional part of this is the most interesting, perhaps, of the building, at least a significant piece. And then what I like about this is the story goes just a little bit deeper. Key content, the models, the perspectives, right? And I love it when it kind of starts to make comparison, or we have data. There's kind of, it's going to have impact, right? This is not just some formal exercise. This project really is kind of adding up to say, you know, these are the things that we're going to do that's going to make this more sustainable. It gives this project so much more depth. And so really show the kind of intelligence of and the innovation of the work. Find ways to tell that story. Again, I love this 2-page spread because we're seeing a kind of digital drawing that has materiality and people in it. You know, we're playing with this kind of windows and the patterning of the material side. They built this physical model, right? And they're looking at this model from, yeah, they're thinking in both a kind of digital 3-dimensional way and a physical 3-dimensional way. And by the way, they've got very kind of specific things they were trying to achieve here. And then finally, I think this is a nice ending for this project, that it's kind of, what is it like? You know, this is, maybe not all your images are going to be this invested. Maybe you only have to do one really good, the first opening image was a really good image as well. But, place them in a way that I think matters. And for me, this gives a nice punctuation for the end of the story. I can read into this and see a lot, and I don't need a lot of words. I can interpret that project this way. So, all projects are the same. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end. They introduce from a kind of large picture to helping us understand the process. And then in the end of the day, what is the kind of impact, the details, the kind of materiality, and what is it like? So from big picture to kind of more specifics. We, last year, students, Jaden Landreth was one of them, was recognized for her 3rd-year portfolio. And so I thought I'd give examples real quick, just to kind of reinforce this idea that, through a set of 2-page spreads, you can tell this story. So here we are with our, a good title, a brief description, and some data that helps us understand what this is about. Site plan. I like the image on the right because it's, a bird's eye, isometric view, kind of peels away the layers. So make your viewer the smartest person, right? Don't leave them kind of confused. This puts it all out there right from the start. We can kind of see where it is and what it's about. And, she chose to put the kind of material, what is it like image on the second spread. And then more detail about the conceptual development from monument to building. She had 2 keywords, celebrated to contested. Those can be really helpful because they're kind of operational and they help you understand, give you insight into the decision making. Otherwise, we'd be confused. Why is this building wedge-shaped, or what's it about? But this helps in a visual way with a few annotations to really get us on the same page. more detail, again, back to the site plan, but it's not just a plan. It shows us the formal development, the kind of diagrammatic moves that they were thinking about, some experiential drawings. And then this actually was her 508 project, I guess, but you know, you can see the kind of detailing. One drawing relates to the other, right? There's, you know, we can see a plan diagram. We understand where that plan's cut or those sections are cut. Love the kind of the orange people with the orange text, right? There's a kind of graphics consistency throughout the entire piece and portfolio. And then it kind of ends with this large section and some details.
One thing I'll say, especially in response to that project, lately, the last year or two, I've been talking to my students. Architects do a lot of different kinds of drawings for different purposes. But in my mind, there's kind of three types of drawings that architects do that probably almost every one of your projects will have a version of each one of those. We do drawings about how things work. So a floor plan tells how it works spatially. A section tells how it works, you know, sectionally. Diagrams talk about how it might work conceptually, and then how it looks, you know, so the perspectival drawing, the elevational drawing at some level. You know, some of them are hybrid drawings. They'll talk about how it looks and works at the same time. So actually that drawing that we're looking at right now, that section on the bottom, it's a section, so it tells us how it works sectionally, but it's done with materiality and color and that sort of stuff. So it also gives us a sense of what it's like or what it looks like. And then the other kind of drawings that we do as architects are how it's made. So that in this project, we see those construction details and that sort of thing. But even if we didn't have those construction details up above, we could look at that drawing below and see that it's panelized, you know, that there's some kind of modularity to the construction or something like that. So how it looks, how it's made, how it works. And I think if your project doesn't have all of those things, or all of those types of drawings in there, there's a chance you're missing an important part of the story that you could be telling.
Can you repeat that? How it looks, how it works?
How it works, and how it's made.
Nice. Yeah, I like this sectional drawing too, because it reconfirms that earlier series of conceptual drawings. We see the monument in the context of the shape of the building, right? This kind of idea has carried through, and that's a great ending because it reconfirms the conceptual, but in a kind of, I think, technical way and spatial way. Just
I think that drawing at the bottom is all three of those. It's a hybrid drawing that tells us how it looks, how it works, and how it's made, all three.
Mm-hmm. It's nice. I like that. And then just a final, well, I guess I have a couple, but you know, I thought this was interesting just because it's slightly different in its sensibility. And I think Dakota's whole portfolio, you can instantly say, oh, this is about the light and the shadow, high contrast, right? There's something kind of, the architecture is about that. And so she uses the black wall as the background to the text. And I really like the way it's all coming together. She moves into, you know, these clouds and this kind of fills that space, gives us a sense of, this is on the, I think the Lawrence campus on the hill. So it kind of gives us the sense of a crowning space and that the site, and again, the kind of extruded and layered series of existing and kind of site placement. We don't need a lot of words. Visually, we get a lot of information, but it's a collection of these drawings together that really works successfully. She moves into kind of site, you know, you can see the formal strategy of these twisting wedges on the site and the relationship to its context, conceptual kind of unraveling or, you know, breaking it down for us to understand the different kind of studies, concept studies that she approached. And then ultimately more kind of data or, you know, plan objective look at the rooms And then we see, you know, a kind of series. And if you slow down, you could kind of really kind of start to see this thing twisting, and that there's something on the left side related to kind of comprehensive understanding of the right side and how circulation moves through these forms. It's a pretty simple idea, you know, but and the way she relates it helps us understand its beauty and how simple it is. These sections, I think, are beautiful. So many textures and layers. Again, she's kind of carrying this kind of sensibility of almost a kind of sensuality about light and shadow and materiality and environment through the sections. These perspectives, you know, they're pretty simple, but and not a lot of color, right? She's really kind of restrained in her approach, and her whole portfolio kind of reads this way. And then kind of his qualities. So one last, Alexa Balkema, also, this is her third year entering portfolio. You know, again, the chapter starts with a clear title, subtitles, and narrative. And then we get a nice little image that gives us a glimpse of what this project's about. I am kind of I do not like the rivers of white space in the text. I would suggest, this is one flaw I think Alexa could improve. I would go flush left and ragged right with that paragraph text, because I think the white space in that text is distracting. And if a graphic designer saw this, they would like be shocked by it, right? Like it's a common mistake. We kind of like everything as architects nice and tidy on the left and the right side, but I think then you got to do the work to work out the spacing of the typography, which, you know, that's not something we're equipped necessarily to do. The second page, love it. You know, you see the site context. You've got these diagrams, both in a kind of spatial way and a diagram plan way, right? So we can instantly see the transition from one idea to the next. So rich with lots of information, very few words, arrows and color, really, you know, a tight use of color and line weights and space, using that white space to distinguish between things and then to cluster things together. So there's a lot here. I could get lost in this drawing for a long time. I like that the two plans are together, because you can then see one and the other and start to make a correspondence between these two layers. I like it that there's numbers and indexing of the floor plans. You know, again, just look at the kind of subtle use of color and line weight. And then we can start to kind of see, you know, perspectives in relationship to the plan. So she's kind of transitioning from the facts of the plan to the results of the spaces, right? Important spaces in her project. And then this kind of objective drawing that really kind of stacks the different programmatic spaces, but we can see this all connecting in a very spatial way. I appreciate that she's got the Nelson there, you know, that this was influential to her project, perhaps influencing her own work. And so there's a kind of story transitioning from the kind of space. And then look at these sections and perspectives. Again, I think it's really valuable not to curate your portfolio so that they are separated, but they're constantly doing different types of drawings together. The section with the exterior perspective and an interior perspective, right? Lots going on. And in my mind, I'm trying to like, okay, where is that section cut? How, you know, what is that facade, and how did that influence this twist of the facade becomes a twist on the interior, right? We're starting to kind of see some corresponding impacts of these decisions. A facade study against a sectional study, and then this little detail kind of offsets this, right? So it really becomes a kind of rich comparison between different ways of understanding this building. Do you see the subtle color of the murals inside that section, right? Very careful use of color. So a kind of black and white approach. And, this kind of collage use of, I would imagine this is SketchUp with Illustrator and Photoshop, really kind of combining these things. Keeps our focus. I mean, the left drawing is really about watershed and water collection and water movement across the site, right? And then those perspectives are telling that story as well. And we can understand that this exterior space is really one of the most important parts of the project. So using these kind of diagrams and even the kind of little vignettes of grass and different types of native plants help us understand. We don't have to render that drawing. We can start to make some associations. And then more perspective. Don't forget, this Alexa put her first year project and it's only 2 pages. This is all it is, or two-page spreads, she's helping us understand the kind of narrative and what it was about and a physical model and then some line drawings. So you don't have to, I know that first year seems like a really long time ago, but sometimes it can offer some other ways of making and seeing that your upper level studios don't have. So don't discount it. Use it to your advantage. Don't feel like you have to go into a lot of detail. Those studio reports from first year are dense with information. I think my advice is to wean those out a little bit and just get the best jewels and kind of tell a simple story. But show the work. I would encourage you to include it.
Say that there's probably a good chance that the people who are looking at the portfolio went through architecture school one time. They know what it's like to be in first year. They know what it's like to be in second year and third year. And I think oftentimes they'll enjoy looking at those things and comparing your work to what they remember from when they were in school, and understanding that a lot of the lessons you learn in architecture school, you learn early and then you reinforce as time goes on. And so I would, like just what Shannon said, there's some good stuff in those early years. Don't discount them.
And then finally, I'll just wrap it up. Packaging the work, don't forget that first impression of your title, having something that, we just want to kind of grab it and understand it. Maybe it's got a personal drawing or maybe process drawings. Margaret Rose on the bottom is interesting to me. And I would be looking for like, oh, is that a diagrammatic or a process? Cover, really grabs my eye. It's a freehand drawing moment, right? Just think about how you can incorporate these things. I always recommend a contents page. Help your viewer know what the story, the package looks like. Typically, we don't want to do more than 4, 6, 7 projects in a portfolio. So, help us understand what we're about to look at. Don't overcomplicate it, in my view. Keep it simple. A lot of times students will introduce themselves and really kind of share, again, kind of creating that kind of story of what matters, some of their experiences, gives a kind of preview of what matters in the portfolio. Your resume, I'm assuming you guys will be talking me. I kind of understand. I can quickly, probably in 3 minutes, understand who Isabella is, and then I can slow down and look at the details if I want. I know where she's, what level she's at this moment. And then don't be shy to include other interests. This student took an urban theory class or something over in environmental studies, and I think it's really great. East Lawrence land use plan. It sets the student apart. It's Emma Vandewater. So probably was really a lot of research happened in this class, but she was able to, through infographics and mapping and other things, kind of tell an interesting story about this project in environmental studies. So look for ways to connect in a kind of multidisciplinary way. Make something notable from other experiences. I recommend you do competitions. Find a way to do a competition sometime during your career here. You know, that idea that you're working with others. This is a NOMAS student design competition. You know, brings another kind of dimension to this portfolio. Show other skills, photography, other arts, other, you know, travels, other things that you've done. Find a way to, you know, bring that forward. The student had created a blog, and I thought that was interesting, a food blog. You know, we could go check it out, but it shows another dimension of things that are interesting, that interested in. And then finally, the back cover. I always think it's kind of nice to see, you know, your contact information, reminder, kind of easy access to connect with you. Don't forget to do that. Thank you is kind of nice. Just a visual, you know, every good story needs a good period at the end, a punctuation. So, you know, a kind of comprehensive big picture, you'll package this, but it's a series of chapters, and the order and how many and all of that could be another set of questions or discussion, but hopefully this was helpful. Maybe I'll stop sharing, and then if you want me to go back to that, just let me know.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Mhm.
We'll open the floor up to questions. If you guys have any, feel free to unmute or type it in the chat and we'll get to those.
What's your opinion on using, I've seen some portfolios that on the resume, they use a little scale to rank how good they are at things. And I've heard lots of conflicting views on if that's good, because you might be telling them that you're like not that great at something, or if it's bad, or if it's good because it's using graphic representation. So I don't know, I'm really lost on those. So like, is it helpful or is it a bad idea?
Yeah, I saw a student once actually put the types of programs they were using embedded in the projects, right? So it wasn't in the resume, but it was actually, I use, you know, SketchUp with, you know, XX, you know, this app and that stuff. And I thought that was really interesting because it wasn't just like show me what I can do, but in a kind of listed way, but it was actually, you know, in context of the project itself. So you might consider that. It's hard, right? Because on a scale of 1 to 10, that can vary a lot, you know. But I suppose if you list it, you better, you know, be confident that you could actually perform. And so I would probably be a little bit on the modest side, but then I would make sure that the work demonstrated your skill set. And, you know, if you wanted to kind of expand on it, you could make a statement embedded in the projects themselves. Nils, do you have an opinion on that?
I don't have a strong opinion, but you know, that's the kind of thing that it's hard to quantify, you know. And so I like the idea of what Shannon just talked about, like in the context of this project, I used these things, you know, and then people can sort of take it for what it is, you know, in that project. And that's going to change over time. So I don't know, as I talk about it, I don't know that if I'm a huge fan of that kind of thing, you know.
It's almost,
there was a time a few years ago when students were doing that, and it was like they became like icons and like I don't know, it seemed a little contrived to my eye.
it's almost become commonplace and almost overused, so kind of a little bit meaningless. So I wouldn't bring a lot of emphasis to it. But again, I think if you can illustrate it and talk about it, you know, pencil and paint and, you know, the hammer are great tools too. So I don't know if that's added to your list, but, you know, that diversifies something that's purely a technical software issue.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. I
Looks
like,
like Sorry, go ahead.
Looks like Eddie had some advice on that. So
Yeah, absolutely. In the chat, it says that looks like better use a frequency of use scale than actual skills level based on how often you use it.
that's interesting.
Yeah. We also have a question from Cooper asking your opinion towards a personal About Me page, if it's necessary or if the work should stand for itself.
Again, that's, I think, an individual call, in my opinion. But I was taken when Isabella kind of presented, a position on sustainability in her portfolio. But if you're going to do that, it better show up in the work, right? You better have evidence that that really matters to you. So I don't know that that's critical. Your resume kind of gives data, but I think sometimes firms are looking for how well can you write. Again, that can happen in your narratives for your description of your portfolio pieces, but there could be an eloquent way to describe your experiences outside of architecture, or what landed you in this place and what motivates you in a way that projects might not be able to tell that story. So you'd have to feel confident, I guess, and that you do have something meaningful essay to write, and it has to be well written. So have others look at it and make it good. Don't feel compelled to do it just because you think you have to. But if it really stands out that you feel compelled to, you should do it.
That's what I would say too. And a future employer is hiring a person. They're not hiring a bunch of projects. So if you can give them insight into what you're like as a person, that would be useful. And obviously you have to be, judicious about that. There are things you don't want them to know about you just as much as you want them to know about you. So, be kind of, be tasteful about it, I suppose. There was this is almost 40 years ago. I worked in Boston as a young architect. There was a softball league that architects participated in. I remember a friend of mine put like his softball statistics on his resume, and he was he liked playing softball, and it was kind of a thing in Boston among architects. And I thought, that's kind of cool. I don't know if a lot of firms couldn't care less about that kind of stuff, but it gives you some insight into kind of him.
I think it's interesting. You all ought to look at like firms. I noticed like a lot of times small firms, they have interesting descriptions of the employees, the people that work there and their interests and their activities. So you could be kind of inspired by that. Whether that lands in a kind of personal intro to me page or in your portfolio or the last page that gives a little picture of you doing something. I don't know. I've heard critics last semester said, don't put a picture of yourself in it, right? Kind of professionalize and neutralize the portfolio and let the work speak for itself. So that opinion is out there as well. But I would probably lean on the side of you are a person and kind of make a connection in some way that humanizes your project or your folio. Kyle asked the question, rules of thumb for reworking projects. I want all my projects to be good, but I also show significant improvement. Wow, yeah. Because you're kind of bringing it up, right? And I think some advice is don't just let a project be, sometimes we're rushed at the end of the semester to pull it together, and you need time for reflection, and you bring new skill sets and maybe you can improve it, or maybe the colors of this project don't kind of make sense in the kind of big picture of the portfolio. So I think there are adjustments. There'll be projects that you'll eventually drop off and you won't want in your portfolio any longer. So, I think it will speak for itself. You'll start to find what really matters and where you think you want to invest in. But I do agree, showing significant improvement is a good thing to do. That's, again, I think showing some of that first year work, even when you graduate, right? Like that could be really interesting just to show a way of kind of growth. But just make sure that the quality, and I would err on improving the general quality of the work if you feel like you know, so that it feels like it's, I guess, can coexist with the other projects in a way that makes it good, while still showing that you've changed your trajectory in terms of the complexity of the project, the kind of the way that you're thinking. Those for me are the kind of ways that you're showing significant improvement. Do you have any opinion on that, Nils?
Yeah, I mean, the projects are what they are. I guess this goes back to what I said. Everybody, was in first year at one point, and they remember what that's like. And I think it's okay to let things sort of stand for a moment in time, be representative of that moment in time. I mean, it'd be weird if you redid all your first year projects and they looked like they were done by a fifth year student. It would be disingenuous. So I'd be careful about that.
Awesome. I'll throw one out there. You guys mentioned the section and orthographic drawings as well. Are there other key skills and elements that professionals look for when they're looking at portfolios, and what would those be?
Well, I'm just going to say KU stands out as a design build, making things. So while you might do stuff in studio, take, other furniture making, or, go work in, a alternative spring break, working in a community and building something. I think it's those kind of people, leadership skills, collaboration, so that you're not just working on individual work. Super important. Yeah, our study abroad programs stand out. And for me, sometimes people just put a series of images that kind of, hey, I went to this, I went to that. That doesn't feel so good to me. I mean, it's just like, unless the photography is extraordinary and you're actually working with the camera and you're doing something that's really significant. But if it's with your iPhone or whatever, I would try to develop it as a narrative. Is there a map that shows the places? Is there a kind of theme about, what you were looking at? Urban spaces, kind of analysis. Could you write a small essay that talks about how I mean, honestly, I think students transform from the kind of study abroad experiences. They start to understand density and, urbanism and transportation in a way that they never experienced in another way. And, you could write a really nice piece, and you could probably develop graphics that would tell that story in an effective way. So don't be casual about these things. If you're going to include them, have something really, I think, significant to show and say about that experience. Again, I think that multidisciplinary, having other experiences out of architecture will set you apart. And, I would be looking for those while you're here at KU.
Yeah, back to the study abroad, I would put it in there if it has kind of architectural content, meaning, a selfie of you at the Eiffel Tower is not all that valuable in your portfolio.
If you want to be in depth and, you're really interested in robotics and mass fabrication, that's another, like find those classes that are going to really give you some depth. Get a certificate, we have 5 different certificate programs. Find a way that your electives add up to some depth of knowledge that illustrate that you aren't just kind of signing up for random electives, but they're adding up to being something that's really meaningful. And it's going to set you in a direction that, could be a career making, or you could add something to a firm's, or that will help you, find that firm that's a good fit for you, right? So I can't say enough. If you're not doing this, you should be looking at firms and really trying to reach out and get firm tours. There's so many opportunities during the year to connect to others. It will help when you can see others' ways of, refining the message and refining the kind of work that they do, the kind of work building types, scales, their approach to the work. It's a good test, you can go, oh yeah, that's what that's about. And that's how they present that in their kind of literature, their websites. Sam Haney said AIAS is going to have more firm visits this year. That's great. So be sure to take advantage of that, because I think when you see others work, you'll start to kind of recognize and see ways to improve your own portfolio.
One thing I would add too is like go to the Hatch and pick up books, actual books, because all of those have been edited. They've been like done with a high level of quality. And if you can make your portfolio look like the images, the plans, the sections, and all that kind of stuff you find in actual books, then that's probably a pretty good target to shoot for.
Yeah, that'd be great. Like monographs. How does Glenn Market present his own work, and how does he edit and image? That would be great. There's a whole section in Hatch of just monographs, and you could kind of compare and contrast different firms or different practicing architects. Also, AIAS, you ought to look at inviting graphic design professors. Maybe you could have a session with them, or upper level graphic design students, to give you critique, give you some rules of thumb that they go by. It's so easy to use InDesign and, do this stuff, but it is a whole profession, and there is a difference in the way that graphic designers, they develop the rigor, just like we do with making buildings and interior architecture. I have a lot of respect for what they can bring to it, but they probably could bring you some good tips and good criticism if you'd be willing.
That's an awesome idea. We should definitely think about that for sure. I think a lot of the questions I had, you guys answered. I had some specific questions about how much writing there should be in a project, or if there's a good order for the types of drawings within a project. But I think we saw with the examples that it really just depends on each individual and how they want to tell the story of their project. So.
Yeah, I think it's just, if you start to get bored, have other people look at it. And if they don't see the connections in your story as they go through the pages, have them critique it. If we get bored and it's like, oh man, they're putting everything in there, I don't get the story anymore. Like, edit it, compact it. That's where I love those 2-page spreads that have so many different ways of looking at the project together, right? Then it becomes really rich and energized. But it can get really flat really quick if it's curated and stagnated and, just overwhelming. I would probably never go more than 6 to 8 2-page spreads on any project. Some projects are kind of a series of urban design studies, and then, detailed building studies, and then construction details. So you certainly could break the rules on that, but you just don't want to bore anyone to get, they'll give up and they won't keep with it. So that's not good. Yeah.
Any other questions before we go ahead and close?
Well, you all are generous with your time to spend your Tuesday night with us. I hope that was helpful. I am available if you just send me a note through Teams or email me if you have any more questions.
Thank you both so much. Really appreciate your time and your insight.
Yes, of course.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
See you. Thank you.